All right, we are live. We're going to give everyone a minute or two to roll on in and we will get started. All right, we'll get started in just another minute. I see more and more people coming in and joining us. All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us live. And for all of you who are going to be watching this recording at a later date, thank you. This is our inaugural webinar, so thank you for joining us. We are talking all about accelerating M&A due diligence with revenue analytics today. And so we just really appreciate you being with us. As a brief overview, and kind of to give some context and preface to what we're going to be talking about today, we have seen data to accelerate the entire M&A process. So all the way from planning to exit to post-transaction integration and everywhere in between. But today we're going to talk solely on the revenue component of due diligence. And so that's the phase we're really honing in on, although we hope to in the future talk more about all of the different places that data can play a role in the M&A process. So as we get started, this is a little bit of a look at what our agenda is going to look like. We're going to do some brief intros of who we are. We're also going to hope to hear a little bit from you guys in the Q&A on who you are and your role in the M&A ecosystem. So for this webinar, we're going to use the Q&A tab. So if you see, different than the chat, there's a Q&A button, and we can both have discussion there, and we can also post questions. So if you wouldn't mind using that, if you have questions along the way as we're talking, we will save those to the end, and we're going to have a Q&A portion. So pop those in there, and then we can also use that function for discussion in chat as well. So we're going to talk about the data challenge that we see in the M&A process and dive into what is most challenging about data in the due diligence process. Then we're going to talk about a few case studies and then our approach to due diligence and using data in that process. And then we'll highlight a few key takeaways, do some Q&A, and then give you guys an opportunity to learn more about us. So a little bit about infoFluency. We exist to make business data useful and meaningful. We serve primarily the middle market, executive teams, and how we fulfill that is through dashboards and through preparing data to be visualized. It is our passion to make data accessible and understandable. We really believe that that is a driving factor in a business and really just opens up a world of possibility when you can really see, understand, and make strategic decisions with your data. We are really active in the M&A ecosystem, and primarily that's because a lot of our clients are somewhere in the journey of exit. So, whether they're thinking about selling or they're, going on an acquisition spree, whatever it may be, we find that to be very common amongst the companies we work with. And we really truly believe that effective use of business data means better exit outcomes no matter what your goals are. So that's a little bit about us, why we exist, and we will do some brief introductions of who we are. Robin, I'll let you start.
Right. I'm Robin Sturgis. I'm the founder of infoFluency and the proud leader of what I believe is an extremely exceptional team. We are a family business. Alyssa is my eldest of 3 daughters, and it's my joy to run this business with her. I have a 30-year career in data and strongly believe in its potential, like Alyssa mentioned, strongly believe in its potential to positively impact business outcomes. So that's what gets me out of bed, what drives me to run and grow this company.
And I'm Alyssa McGinn. I work directly in sales and marketing, overseeing the growth, expansion, and vision of the company. That truly does bring me joy to think about where we're headed and where we're going. I've been with infoFluency now for about 3 years. And as mentioned, I am Robin's oldest daughter, and it really is, it's fun and a privilege to get to work alongside her.
Hello, I'm Carrie Eggleston. I am a growth consultant here for infoFluency. I've had the pleasure of working with these exceptional women for about a year now. My background is in economics and finance, but very quickly after graduation found myself working with different tech companies of all sizes and have been drawn to that ever since for the transformative abilities of technology to impact businesses and their growth. So it's my pleasure to help drive strong relationships within infoFluency and our clients that really align our innovative analytics to client strategic objectives and enhancing their business success. And we would be remiss to not mention our incredible services team, including project managers, lead analysts, support analysts, and special contractors that help us deliver these incredible outcomes for our clients.
So now that we've introduced ourselves, we would love to know from all of you guys who's with us today in the room, the virtual room. So in the Q&A tab under discussion, we'd love for you to comment, what's your role in the M&A ecosystem? Are you an exit planner? Do you advise on the transaction? Do you provide capital? So we'd love to hear from you guys what your role is. And as those are coming through, I will start to give us a feel for who's in the room. We saw a question come through about the Q&A. And sometimes if you're on a phone or another type of device, you have to swipe to the next screen. So we have value creation, sell-side M&A advisory, fractional CFO, a buyer. Nice. So as those keep trickling in, I would love for you guys to even see who else is, here, and hope we love a good connection and creating networks. So as you guys even see other people you'd like to know, please feel free to connect.
I'm going to dive in by talking about the challenge, the data challenge that we see in the due diligence process. So we have a lot of conversations. We've done a lot of research that show us that due diligence has a challenge, particularly in the middle market, that we will discuss today. The big accounting and consulting firms like McKinsey, Deloitte, PwC, they are routinely including revenue analytics in their due diligence, and they have the luxury of large teams. They have the luxury of great technology. But this is something that many middle market deal teams lack in terms of resources. So we feel that these middle market or lower middle market deal teams have the exact same need to analyze the commercial health of exiting companies And it's something that we feel strongly about, that we can bring value in bringing those resources and making them accessible to that lower middle market and the middle market. So specifically for due diligence teams, we're seeing a challenge in a significant amount of time that is required to spend with wrangling spreadsheets, consolidating information, and all done fairly manually without the benefit of data prep tools. So for buyers, we're seeing the struggle to get enough quality commercial information in that initial deal review to enable them to make a speedy, pass or proceed decision before they invest significant time and resources and get further into due diligence before they get all the information that they truly need. And then there's sellers who we're seeing really elongate that due diligence process by reactively providing information to many multiple requests. And alternatively, they could really speed that process and accelerate that by being proactive and providing to the market high quality information early in the process. And that would save them and their exit prep team significant time and resources as well. We also believe, and we'll touch on a bit, is that some advantages that a seller has in valuation by using data well as they present to the market. And on the buyer side, when they purchase a company that has great data and great data platforms, that they're purchasing an even more valuable asset, and their integration typically goes much more smoothly when they have that present in their acquired company. So today we're going to walk through an alternative to these challenges and share with you our approach in meeting this challenge in easily including revenue analysis in due diligence. So we're going to explain some of how we bring tools and speed and some expertise to making comprehensive commercial analysis more accessible as a part of due diligence. So we're going to jump in with these topics with some case studies. I'm going to walk through kind of how we approach these challenges with these stories, and they are based on actual clients, but of course we've substituted some names, we've substituted some details to protect confidentiality and ensure that we're being faithful to our clients and their stories. So our very first story that I want to tell you is the story of a buyer. So we're going to call them ABC strategic buyer. So let's consider them as evaluating a potential target acquisition. $40 million industrial distribution company, $2 million in EBITDA. They were attracted by the pitch deck that an investment banker put in front of them, and so they started their initial phase of due diligence. So this buyer has some questions, pretty standard buyer questions, things that they want to understand specifically to the commercial equation. And again, this whole topic that we're talking about today is the revenue commercial portion of due diligence. So while the CPA and the attorney began some initial review of financial statements and contracts and so forth, the CEO of ABC and the business advisor sought to understand, the full picture of the revenue. And they specifically wanted to understand trends, seasonality, customer concentration, as well as things like product performance, which products were selling, what was the concentration there in terms of product, and then the revenue contribution of other aspects like divisions or business lines and so forth. So to get the answer to these questions, they had to bring some sort of order to a variety of messy spreadsheets that were provided by the target. So they, in general, received 3 years of sales transaction data in multiple files, scattered across, a variety of spreadsheet tabs, and as is so often the case, many multiple formats. Columns that in this tab that don't look like the columns in this tab, etc. Some of the data came from an older ERP before they had migrated to their new one. Some of it came from online sales versus their traditional sales methods. And so there was just a significant amount of work to be done to create something consolidated and clean that could be analytics ready. So one of the analysts on the advisory team planned to take the spreadsheet mess home, work at night to manually kind of organize that so they could really get some good information out of it. Advance this slide. So much messy data. And our solution, as we offered an alternative, was rather than preparing that data manually, which is very painful if you have spent any time in a spreadsheet, is to apply these data transformation tools and put them to work to organize the data quickly and easily, and end up with something that looks like what you're seeing on your screen here, where all of the various files and tabs have been consolidated into one nice, clean, single file that can be used for analytics in further investigation by the team. But then also beyond that, what we have done at infoFluency is take this a step further and put this data into a template that we have built. And you're seeing here a look at our template, and what we have designed this to do is answer the most primary buyer questions. And we really feel like this is something that at a glance can provide, this trends over time. It can provide some look at geography and the geographical dispersion of the client base. Some metrics across the middle here where we're seeing total revenue over the time period. What's the revenue for the average order? How many orders are they typically getting? How many customers do they have? We include profit here, but I acknowledge we don't always get profit or even margin in the data set. But when we do, I think it's a really powerful thing to include. Here we're ranking the products so that we can see what is the product concentration and which products are those that are contributing the most revenue. And looking too at seasonality, and we look at seasonality in terms of product, but that can be sliced and diced a variety of ways to really understand in depth what the seasonality picture is. We're also looking at average customer lifetime value. We're looking at the top 10 customers. Who are they? How do they rank? What is their contribution as a top 10 to the overall percentage of revenue that's coming in? To really understand, is there a concentration issue perhaps? And then the trends in buying by those top 10 customers. Right. So back to our story of ABC. So in their case, when they looked at the target's customer ranking, they found that there was a significant risk that they were uncomfortable with. So if you see here in this ranking chart, the top 2 customers are contributing an outsized amount of the revenue. And for ABC, they quickly determined that there was too much risk to move forward with this deal, and were not willing to invest any further due diligence time or expense. And for them, finding that fatal flaw quickly allowed them to avoid a bad investment, and that would be the ultimate outcome, but in a shorter term to avoid further expense in time and due diligence research. So For them, the data was really important to allow them to make that quick decision and to see and recognize that fatal flaw very quickly. So we have found some agreement in the conclusions that we're drawing out there in the market. And this large accounting firm, I'm sure you guys have heard of Plant Moran, they state it well when they say that even just a modest amount of business intelligence tools applied to this process can save buyers, actually every party in the deal, significant time and effort and money in data prep. All right, for our second case study, we're looking at the story of a sell-side XYZ company. In this example, it's really kind of the best case scenario possible for a seller. They got double their number they were looking for in a 90-day transaction. And I know that that is extremely unusual, but it is that seller's dream. And so it's a great story to share with you guys. So XYZ's owner founder, ready to retire, engaged a transaction advisory firm to find a buyer. So together, the founder and the advisor set out to prepare a compelling company story to share with the market. And they wanted to highlight what they felt like were their really best strengths, their large and diversified customer base, their very strong product offerings, and their stable top-line growth. They looked at 5 years of data, and their desire was to use that data to help them tell this story. The seller really was interested in a speedy process. He was ready to be done. He was ready to exit and ready for this exit process to go quickly and smoothly. And he believed that providing very high quality, very proactive information to the market would really accelerate that process. And we set out to help him to do that very thing. So we transformed their revenue data back to our template that I showed you earlier. We pulled their data from NetSuite and pulled that data into this summary. And again, with the buyer's questions in mind. And we felt like the quality of the information that we could provide on their behalf to the market would really indeed catch the eye of the multiple buyers and high quality buyers. We felt like there was strength not only in the information that we were providing, but that it was being provided proactively, that it was coming to them in a very organized fashion upfront. So in this case, in this instance of this client, we extended the use of revenue data, and we went a step further than what we've talked about so far. And we went on to use that data to produce what is called a customer recency frequency analysis. And I'm not going to dig into the detail of this because we could have another hour webinar. But what this actually does in summary is to put the customer base into these buckets of, say, loyal to recent to they need some attention to we've lost them. And it gives the sales team and the marketing team really important information that they can use to grow the client base and improve marketing while the due diligence process, while the exit process is transpiring. And this is really valuable because that buyer then, not only do they see a strong history, but they see a company that continues to grow despite the distraction that their founder is undergoing by walking through the exit process. So that's just a glimpse of one thing that we will do to take that revenue data a step further and strengthen the company. All right, so I'm going to just wrap up that second story by saying that the seller did indeed get a great outcome. Like I said, a PE buyer walked through this process very quickly in 90 days. They got an excellent price for their company, and and their founder was off to retirement and very happy. On the buy side, that PE buyer was then equipped not only with a great asset in the company that they acquired, but with an analytics foundation that would allow them to integrate their purchase much more effectively and utilize that analytics foundation for the asset that it also is. So in summary, these stories, I hope for you, illustrate that great tools and effective presentation of data can indeed accelerate this due diligence process for all the involved parties. And then I want to talk just a little bit about how we do this, what our approach is. And I will try really hard not to get into the technical weeds here. But in summary, we gather data. A lot of times that's on spreadsheets, but in many cases that's pulling data from a business application like a CRM or an ERP or an accounting platform like a QuickBooks or a Sage, et cetera. Once we have connected to or gathered that data, we are prepping it and consolidating it, ensuring that it's clean and usable, and addressing perhaps some messy data issues along the way. And then when we have achieved that nice, clean data set, then we will generate this report template or any manner of other dashboards using that nice, clean data. And then, like I mentioned in my example, optionally, we might enrich that data, and then we might create some advanced reporting. And when I say enrich the data, I mean that we might pull in industry benchmarks, or we might pull in some kind of CRM data that gives us customer attributes. Any number of outside data sources might help us make that data even more powerful and meaningful. So I'm looking at the time, and I am going to pass on an additional step, but tell you guys how to find this yourselves. So if we had time, I was going to show you kind of a live interactive version of this report. But because we don't have time, I'm going to guide you that if you're interested, on our website, you can find interactive dashboards, and it gives you an opportunity to see what it's like to hover your mouse over different data points, to filter, and to click on multiple things to get subtotals and things like that, and just experience for yourself what it's like to use an analytics platform in that way. So invite you to do that if you're interested in that component of it.
So remember, as we're going through this, to put questions, and we'll go through a Q&A here in just a moment. So if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A tab, and we will address those. So just to wrap up, I feel like you summarized it very well, but our conclusions and takeaways from all of this is that a lot of due diligence teams working in the middle market specifically, this level of revenue due diligence specifically can be out of reach, just with limited resources, limited time, quick turnaround. All of those factors can play a role in that. And so, the comprehensive piece of that can be out of reach. So that's a key takeaway we've taken from this, and just from our experiences as well. Secondly, that really, as she emphasized in the second story, that sellers really can use analytics to emphasize the business strengths. And I think that data is what it is, data, very technical, but it also, when visualized, can tell a very beautiful and compelling story. And so I think that there's a lot to emphasize there for sellers to proactively look at their data if they're looking to sell at any time in the future. And third, on the buy side, that buyers know exactly what they're buying, and they're prepared going into it for what will be hopefully a more seamless post-transaction integration, as well as just confidence going through the whole process as they're buying a company. So those are kind of very high-level takeaways from our experiences, as well as the content we've shared here today. So I will pass it over to Carrie for some Q&A.
Thanks, Alyssa. We've got some good questions rolling in that I'm excited to tee up for y'all. So let's start with a question for Alyssa from Rich Hall. He asks, what does a typical engagement look like in terms of time frame, costs, whatever we're comfortable sharing that we feel is pertinent?
Yes, great question. So typically, from the time that we gather the data and can have that in our hands, we can turn this around in about 2 weeks. We have done that on an accelerated timeline due to time constraints before. So with knowledge of an accelerated timeline, we can definitely turn that sooner. As we know, some people are looking at a lot of deals and need this information in a timely fashion. And we will talk about cost at the end. So I won't not mention that, but I will get to that before we close out.
Great, thank you. And just a friendly reminder for anyone else who has questions, feel free to drop those in the Q&A or upvote if you see a question that you is already posed that you're interested in. So let's move along. Brian Burkholder has a couple of questions. So Robin, I'll pose these to you as a two-part.
Sure.
The first part of the question being, are these reports just point in time or are they set up as ongoing data? And of the reports, are we able to capture EBITDA?
Excellent questions. Yes. So single point in time, yes. When I showed the template that we have created, that is typically used as a single point in time, a snapshot. It'll cover, 3 years, say, through X date. However, we do also offer the opportunity to refresh that on some kind of a cadence, whether that's quarterly, monthly, whatever is needed for the process. And again, this is pointed towards due diligence more than an ongoing analysis for running the business. But in those instances where we are pointing our analytics to ongoing operational uses, then we are refreshing or keeping that data completely live, where it's auto refreshing either to the minute, to the hour, to the day, et cetera. Did I hit all the points, or was there an additional question there that I might have missed?
You did an amazing job as always, Robin. Thank you for that. So
Absolutely.
let's also speak to the benefit of setting up data to run some of these reports and how they really serve as a building block that you're able to easily iterate for additional use cases. I think that bears mentioning because the time and involvement really allows for some cool things, once you've started the process.
Will you repeat
Robin,
your?
sorry,
Okay, sorry. Will you repeat your question for me?
Sure. Can we explain for the audience a little bit more about how any efforts that we undertake, including revenue analytics, they're really serving as building blocks that additional use cases can be built off of the data and efforts that have already been done?
Yes, absolutely. So to answer that question, I'll kind of circle back to that example that I gave of the recency frequency analysis. And so that's one instance of a way that we took our starting point, which was pretty summarized revenue data, and translated that into something that served an additional purpose. And so that's still within the realm of revenue data, right? And we might do lots of things with revenue data, and especially folding in the marketing piece and looking at pipeline and incoming expected revenue and forecasting. There's many extensions in the revenue piece, but beyond that, we can get into more operational side analytics where we're looking at efficiencies or inventory or project management or HR or finance or any number of other business disciplines that the data can speak to.
Excellent. Thank you, Robin. Alyssa, question for you. Jeff Brown would like us to delineate, are we a software or a consulting projects company?
That's a good one. I would say if we chose one of those buckets, we are a consulting firm more than software. We utilize third-party tools, and we like to operate flexibly with whatever applications and preferences that the clients have. And so we've built up a expertise in multiple analytics tools, multiple transformation tools, so that we can flexibly serve. So we definitely are a service consulting firm. It's a good question.
Excellent, thank you.
Great question.
So next question is going to be for Robin. M&A transactions often involve companies with diverse data quality and systems. How do we handle the variability to ensure consistent and reliable analytics across the board? I feel like we've spoken to that in part thus far, but I'd like to kind of wrap that up with a bow.
Yes. So there is a varying complexity, of course, in consolidating that data. And to that point, data comes to us through any manner of systems, both legacy and current. It can be very complex, and so we really rely on our data prep tools. And these are platforms that allow us to align, for instance, align like pieces of data that come from different places so that they are treated as one. For instance, little example, you might have sales from one system that's called sales amount, and from another system, you might have it called revenue, and maybe it's in different currencies. And so our tools are designed to combine those together, treat them as one, do the proper conversion so that they're all in one currency, et cetera. So we're relying on our tool set really to provide that consistency and to consolidate that data. And sometimes, which I don't want to delve too much into this because it's complex, but at times we'll have to blend two different types of data, like blending accounting with CRM data that describes the customer. And then there's a whole process that's involved in how do you reliably join those two data streams together in an accurate way. Last thing I'll mention on this question is that we also rely heavily on analytics to identify data anomalies and to keep the data clean and to recognize when there's data issues so that we can present data that we are confident is accurate.
Wonderful. Thank you, Robin.
Yeah.
Next question is for Alyssa. It's from Brian. Can you provide examples of how this data can help prioritize early value creation initiatives for the buyer? So how the data prioritizes early value creation initiatives for the buyer.
This is all, I mean, a lot of what I will share is anecdotal in nature, that working with, private equity firms and, even just individuals on the buy side, I think that even from the very beginning of initially evaluating a company, this just provides exponential confidence. And then, we talked all the way through, a kind of a roadmap for post-transaction integration. And I think, as mentioned as well, it almost shows you like what needs to be done post transaction, and almost lays it out very clearly to allow for that to be a less stressful, murky process. And so, I think that even in the transaction, I think it creates clear initiatives for what needs to be done kind of in those early integration stages. And so I think, whether that is, hey, we need to, we're going to roll up 3 entities and we need to establish a BI layer on top of all of them instead of using one that's already, pre-existing. Whether that is, we really need to focus on, maybe more strategic in nature, we really need to focus on growing this specific vertical that has a lot of potential that we see in the data, but hasn't really been a focus to date. So those are a few ways that I could see that playing out.
Excellent, thank you. We've got time for one more question from Jeff Brown. I'm actually gonna, it's a 2-part, and I'm gonna break it up. And Alyssa, the first part is going to go to you. Are there any domains or industries where we like to focus?
Mm. So we are, I mean, pretty much agnostic. Data is data. And especially being in the M&A ecosystem, we've worked with, um, companies all across the board. We have found some concentration in the industrial vertical, all across the supply chain there. Um, some concentration in aerospace, and then kind of a handful of other, I mean, quite a few of other types of companies that really don't bear concentration mention, but at the end of the day, the data is all the data, and so there may be small discrepancies between industries, but we don't have internally a huge leaning or preference.
Thank you. And to close out our Q&A time, I'm going to complete the second part of Jeff's question. Robin, do we also do margin analysis and price optimization?
Yes, margin analysis when we have that data, and we will extend that to profitability analysis, but it gets more complex when we do that because it's only done well with the collaboration of the client's team, and specifically their CFO or their controller that can help us understand their cost allocation, and to be our partner in appropriately reporting margin, yes, but more so profitability in that instance. We do quite a bit of work with advisors that are, co-serving our client. And we love that scenario because they bring in expertise, especially with something like price analysis. When, our expertise on that gets a bit limited. And when we hit our limitation there, we do our best work when we have an advisor or a CFO or someone else that's involved in that collaboration.
Awesome, thank you. Well, that concludes our time for Q&A. Any questions that went unanswered, we'll be sure to answer those via email. Feel free to drop a few in here now in the last few minutes, and we'll follow up afterwards. And of course, you can reach out to us individually if a question pops into your mind, later in the day or the week. So.
And to wrap up, we wanted to make a special offer to everyone who is here with us. If all of the things that we've explained, we want to offer that to all of you as you've joined us. And so what that offer is going to be is with 3 years of sales transaction data, we would return an organized data file and a revenue report. So the data file would be a single file like was pictured, and then the revenue report, which was the template with the data from the file in it. And so that's a one-time offer, and this offer is for $975 for the report and a file, and we're going to do this for the next month. So from today through July 18th. And if, I've seen a lot of people on here who are advisors or some sort of service provider in the ecosystem, this can also be for a client. This can be on behalf of someone that you work with or for. So we would love to have all of you, take us up on this offer. And if you're interested, if you'll go to the next slide, there's a QR code that has a very brief form. And so that will just give us your basic information, and then an opportunity to schedule a 15-minute call, which will just help us to get the information that we need to fulfill these orders. So if you're interested, scan the QR code, and this link will also be in the follow-up email that we send out. So if you can't, frantically find your phone to scan this QR code as it sits on the screen, we will be sending out this link, and we will keep this offer live for the next 30 days. And then additionally, if you just want to learn more about us, if you want to have more resources, interact with the dashboards mentioned, this QR code will take you to our resources page that has very specific M&A resources on it. So blog, podcast, just additional resources that you can, just take the initiative to learn more about us if you're not quite ready to engage. And as well, on that resource page will also be the registration opportunity for our next webinar, which will be Wednesday, July 17th. So that will also, an opportunity to register for that will also be on the follow-up email. So we really appreciate all of you guys being here. Thank you so much. And you will be receiving all of this, including the recording, via email in the next couple of days.
Alyssa, if we
Thank
have
you.
time for one last clarifying point, I did get a question asking how many different reports we can generate from the 3 years of transaction data. And since we may have a couple people interested in that, if we have time to.
The limit does not exist. No, I am joking. All jokes aside, how many reports we can generate from? Do they mean? I guess I need clarity. Like, do they mean like multiple from the same set of data?
How about this, Manny? We
or
will
like
follow up with you
iterations?
after this
Yeah.
and start a dialogue and make sure we get your answer question
Need some more
answered
clarity on that. Yeah.
specificity. But thank you for the
Perfect.
question, and thanks everyone for your time.
Really appreciate you all being here. Thank you.
Have a good day.